All right, this is part two of my Modern Warfare analysis. I did not mean to go that long. I thought I was just going to be doing a 15-20 minute review, but I want to get all my thoughts out. I'm not only just doing a summary of the game, I got to make sure I look into the camera. I'm also doing an analysis. I'm going to talk about a few of the Easter eggs. I'm not saying I know all the Easter eggs. I'm just pointing out a few of them that I picked up, and ultimately why this is a soft reboot. I understand why they called it a soft reboot. It's a reboot. Well, there's a reason. So I'm just going to continue. In between recording the first video and second video, and the first video is uploading as I speak, I decided to make myself a double shot of rum and coke. I work at a couple of bars, and I get free drinks, but I don't drink because I'm working. It was trivia night, and I'm also trying to, stay away from too much carbs. I'm not anti-carb, but so this is my first drink of the week. It's a double shot of rum and coke. Calico Jack, I think it's called. And my name is Jack. Ooh, got a little coconut in it. All right, in between the last video and this video, I also watched IGN's review, and it was actually pretty favorable. But again, if you watched my last review, which was my first half of the review, which was the deep dive and analysis, they said exactly verbatim what other critics have been saying and what I knew they were going to say. They ask the moral questions, but they don't answer it. What do you want them to say? That war is bad? We know it's bad. You don't need to go into this game wondering whether war is bad or not. It's always been bad, even the good ones. And it's always been ugly. And there's been horrible things that have happened in them. And I guess what they want is for like this. We're in an era right now where it's not enough to be political in a movie or a TV show. We have to nail it over the head. We have to tell you, force feed you what the right answer is. You got to have that, moment at the end of each. You're like, wow, we're soldiers and we do horrible things. If only the world were different. No shit. People have been saying that for thousands of years, 100,000 years, human beings have been around. We've been at war. And unfortunately, you want them to give you an answer as to whether what you just played or engaged in was right or wrong. And what you really want them to say is it's wrong. And yeah, it is. But the game also shows you what happens when you don't do it. What happens when you give in to terrorists. In the previous mission during the embassy, if you had released the wolf or whatever, what would Al-Qatali all of a sudden have stopped doing terrorism? Would they have been like, wow, thanks for doing what we said? We're going to let the little boy live and we're going to stop terrorism. Thank you. No, that's not what would have happened. And Price is right down the middle. He says, you draw the line. We get dirty, the world stays clean. And that's happening at this moment, for better or worse. Let's go back into the campaign. I'm trying to get through this a little bit quicker, but I also don't want to miss anything. Again, this is for the hardcore fans. This is for the people who have played the campaign and are looking for maybe an opinion on it. I love this campaign. Do I wish it had more of what I called in my spoiler-free review the holy shit moments, like, the Eiffel Tower collapsing. Holy shit, a Russian submarine in New York Harbor. Holy shit. We're fighting in the White House. Holy shit. Berlin's on fire. Holy shit. A nuke went off and killed 50,000 Marines. It didn't have those moments. It had different types of holy shit moments. But I'm going to get to that in the epilogue. And I think this is not going to be my only discussion of this video, of this game. But let's get started. Okay, so last we saw the wolf left. He ran away or was rescued by the butcher. So Hadir sets up an ambush point along this road. This is where I feel like the second half of the game starts. I'm not sure if that's chronologically right, but that's what it feels like. Or maybe the beginning of the third act. I don't know. And this is a pretty cool mission. You're playing as Alex, and you're given Hadir's special rifle. It's interesting. It kind of reminded me of All Gillied Up, where you're looking at Zakhaev, and Macmillan's like, you want to carry the bullet's flight blast, and blah, blah, blah. And he starts telling you, like, how you got to aim above and over to the left. Well, this game tells you, all right, 400 meters, 2 notches. 600 meters, 4 notches. You got, and I don't know anything about weapons, but I do know that in sniping, it's not as simple as, you get the crosshairs and shoot from a yard away. It's different. Snipers are very skilled at taking into account wind and stuff. And again, this is another example where it's wave after wave of Al-Qatali. You're fighting Al-Qatali. And then the Russians show up. This guy, General Barklov, or Barkley, or Balaklava. I could go for a baklava right now. Anyway, it's a fun mission. It's not all gillied up, but you set up an ambush point. You set some IEDs, and again, this is very, this is what people in the Middle East do, when they're outmatched. They set up IEDs, roadblocks, stuff like that. Unfortunately, our soldiers have been a victim of that. IEDs, Humvees being blown up. But it's kind of scary because, like, holy shit, this is what happens. But these are good guys. Good guys. You're fighting them off, and suddenly the Russian army shows up. And it's wave after wave after wave. It's not as intense as the embassy, but it's very claustrophobic. This is a very claustrophobic game. Even though you're in an open desert area, you're in a small town, and they're coming from you from mostly one side, but there are tons of them coming. And finally, Hadir, this is Farah's brother, says, Alex, come with me, my friend. I know what we can do. So at this point, we're chasing Al-Qatali and we're after the wolf because they stole these chemical weapons. Well, this is where a small twist comes in. I wouldn't call it a great twist. It's just something I guess you knew something was coming. You go with him. Hadir opens a truck and it's got the chemical weapons. He opens them up, pushes the truck, and the gas spreads and Alex is dying. He's dying. And finally, Hadir picks him up, puts him in a room. And his sister is pissed because she's against the use of chemical weapons. She says, even if you use chemical weapons, you're my enemy. And she passes out, Alex passes out, and then we have our first of 2 flashback missions. You're in a small town in Urzikstan, and you're playing as Farah, as a young girl. Now, Farah's younger. You're seeing from perspective, her father's carrying her, and the Russians have invaded under the order of General Barklov. I know I'm not saying his name right, but whatever. I'm just picturing Charles Barkley right now, but General Barklov. They're killing people, massacring them. It's very blatant. It's very violent. It's very gratuitous. And I already see the reviews saying, IGN was like, oh, so now it's okay to kill Russians? No one is saying it's okay to kill Russians, IGN. They're just showing you the ugliness of war. It's not okay to kill anyone, it's, I don't know what to do with, the only time, these people are happy is when we kill Nazis. And that's good. We should kill Nazis, in Germany. I'm not saying go and kill white people right now or anything like that. But sometimes these people, they're so involved in the politics. It's okay to shoot Russians, I guess. I'm like, that's not the story. It's a fictional story using real-world events that are happening right now to tell you to kind of fictionalize what happens. What do you think happened in the 50 years of the Cold War? Go ask anyone who grew up in a Soviet-occupied land. Ask the Afghans what it was like when the Soviets invaded in the late 70s and 80s. I guarantee you it looked very much like this mission. Ask my father, who was in the Pakistani army, what it was like. And I already see people complaining. And IGN, I can't stand these professional critics. They're such wimps. All right, this is exactly what happens. If you happen to know anyone who's lived in the former Soviet Union, ask them what it was like. If you knew anyone who grew up in Afghanistan in the 70s and 80s and immigrated here, ask them what it was like. Ask people of Ukraine what happens when the Russians show up. That is not to say that we as Americans have not made mistakes. I'm not saying that, but anyway, this mission is getting a lot of flack from a lot of critics, and I thought it was without a doubt one of the most intense missions and very real missions. All right, yes, this is what happens. The Russians are attacking, and Farah, Hadir, and her dad are just fighting for their lives. All right, this is happening as we speak. October the 24th, 2019. You're in America, you're lucky. But it's getting a lot of flack from critics that, oh, the little girl and the little boy and chemical gas is too much. I'm sorry this happened. Ask the Kurds what Saddam Hussein did to him with chemical weapons that we gave them, and that's a whole other point. This stuff happens. And I feel like there's a very real ignorance of history, or they are purposely ignorant to seem woke or politically correct. And I just see that happening with this mission. This was a very intense mission. So Farah and her father, he carries the father trying to get the brother, and a big Russian guy shows up, has an altercation with the father, shoots the father. Now Farah and her brother are in this small house. Farah's tiny here, like a little itty bitty girl. And this guy, he's walking around, he's looking for the kids, he's going to either kill them or capture them. She ends up having, it kind of reminds me of The Last of Us when Ellie is trapped in the restaurant with David, the cannibal, and she has to keep stabbing him, then running away, and then disorienting him, and then coming up behind him and stabbing him. You got to repeat that cycle a couple times. It kind of got annoying by the, I think, third or fourth time. Like, oh my God. But finally, the brother Hadir jumps in, and what is happening? The chemical weapons have been launched to this town and killed everyone. They both put on masks and they sneak around. There's a pretty tense moment where they have to get into a truck, and I'm trying to remember if they got away or they were captured or what happened. But that's the first time you meet General Barklov or Balaclava. He kind of reminds me of Sosa, Alexander Sosa from, I don't know if you've ever seen Scarface, but he was the drug lord that Scarface went and got like cocaine from in Colombia. He just kind of looked like him. He's kind of like handsome looking general, like, black hair, slick back. He's kind of got a little bit of a tan to him, like someone else, But, very sharp features, and he's like choking this kid, and, is it over the top? Yeah, but you know what? Yeah, that's happened. That happens in war. Read about the My Lai massacre in Vietnam, what happened. Read about the French in Dien Bien Phu. I mean, this stuff happens. I'm sorry, IGN. I'm so sorry. But this is what happens. And they're showing what happens. Little children are killed. Brutally. Mercilessly. Everyone just tends to think the Nazis did shit like this. Yeah, they were the best at it. And by the best, I mean the worst at it. But this happens in war, and I feel like there's a heavy pull to say, don't show it. Same thing with the Joker. Don't show us what happens when someone feels neglected. And, no. This is the ugly reality of it. This is why this is not your daddy's Call of Duty. This is a very aggressive game. This is a very raw game. That part of the game was not fun to play. But boy, did it make me like Farah. I was like, I get it. So their father was killed, and the story jumps forward, so I'm not sure how long they were captured for or what happened after that. But what happens is the daughter and the brother, so Hadir and her are separated. Hadir wants revenge. He stole these chemical weapons, and he doesn't go full-on bad guy at this point. Like, he kind of does, but not. Hadir's like, look, I don't want to use this against America. I don't want to use this against Britain or the West. That's what Al-Qatali wanted. He says, I want to work with Al-Qatali to use it on the Russians. So just as the Russians saw the Urzikistanis as all bad, he wants to punish all of Russia. He doesn't just want to attack the Russian, he's going after Barklov, General Barklov, or whatever his name is, but he also wants to attack innocent Russian people for the crimes of their government. And in a sense, he becomes the same anything. Now, he's not a strong character. He is not Vladimir Makarov. He is not Raul Menendez, who, by the way, still is the best villain in Call of Duty history. He's not that persuasive because, again, this is a villain problem. You have the guy Suleiman, who's called the Wolf. Now it's Hadir, but it's not really Hadir. It's actually General Barklov. Okay. Now the mission becomes, Farah's really apologetic. She wants Price and the commander, her name's like Laswell or Laszlo or Lawsell. It's like a blonde lady. That's not her fault. Well, now, the U.S. commander, the general, says, well, now Farah's army that has been helping us, they're on our shit list. Now they're bad guys too. So we're fighting Al-Qatali and Farah's forces. And this is very much what is happening right now in Syria. I mean, not that, and I don't want to get into the politics of it, but the Kurds helped the U.S. fight ISIS in Syria, and now we're pulling out. Some have criticized this, that, look, we're leaving the Kurds behind, and that we can't trust the Russians, the Syrians, and the Turks, yada, yada, yada. Some are saying, look, we've been in the Middle East too long. We've been there. That's what the president is saying. We've been there for 18 years, and we just have to pull out and let them take care of their own problems. And I'm not saying what's right or wrong there, but in this instance, it's very clear that the West is abandoning Farah, because by Hadir helping al-Qatali to fight the Russians, it kind of takes the West's hands like, hey, we're not really involved in this. It's not really our problem anymore. We were worried about what happened in London. But now that Hadir doesn't really hate America, but he's going to work with the Wolf and al-Qatali and attack the Russians, no fingerprints here. And this is what the CIA calls blowback. When you get involved in a situation and things don't turn out the way you happen. This happened in Afghanistan. We trained Mujahideen to fight the Russians. They wanted our help. But then we left. And they used that same training to make the Taliban, and the rest is history. And, some people have criticized the CIA. Well, how did they know that was going to happen? That no one could have guessed that was what was going to happen. That we got involved, and the repercussions of it culminated in the bombing of the USS Cole, 9/11, and ever since then, that was one aspect of it. And again, Black Ops 2 touched on this. What Frank Woods and Mason did in to Raul Menendez, more specifically the murder of his sister in the 80s, while they were involved in Panama, involved in Afghanistan, involved in South America and Africa, came back to haunt them 30 years later because Menendez built an army up. And so this touches on that. And again, I feel like the average person, these idiots at IGN, they don't read this history. They don't know this stuff. They don't know our own history, so they don't know how real. They don't even pay attention to the news. These people do not watch the news, okay? And not that you should trust the news, but what I'm saying is they're not aware of these events. So when a mission like this comes, they don't understand how actually prescient and relevant it is. But what they're upset is, why didn't they ask the right moral question? Sometimes there's no clear morality. You yourself are suggesting, I'm talking about these critics, that they're showing us a gray area, and then they're saying, well, come down on one side of it. And I guess if they did, you probably wouldn't like that answer either. This game is not trying to give you an answer. This game is not trying to tell you whether Western interference is a good or bad thing. It shows at times in this game that it's good, and shows that when we want to cut our losses, we cut our losses. So this is where Price stands up. Now, Price is pissed. Price is saying, we worked hard with her people. So Price tells this woman, she's the female commander, but she answers to another general. We'll get to that later. Oh my. Can't wait to get to the good stuff. The post-credits. Garrett Cole is the pitcher for the Astros. Kyle Garrick, the SAS guy. And Alex decide to go on their own to help them. At this point, I'm just going to kind of blaze through it, because at this point, it's just about finding the wolf. They find the wolf. He's giving his, really long-ass speech. But the beginning of it is really cool. This is that mission with the SAS. It kind of looks like the Bin Laden raid. And they drop in, night vision goggle, very similar to the London mission, door to door. Moms, children, families. Yeah, they're married to terrorists, but they don't know that. It's like if you found out your dad was a serial killer, I guess not my fault. Like if it turned out my dad was like Dexter, it's not my fault. I didn't know. Do you think these kids know that their parents are blowing up shit or anything? No. So it's pretty scary. There's a part where a woman is screaming, "Give me my son, give me my son, give me my son." And they're like holding them back, and then Price is like, "Let the boy go." And after doing that, the mom's like, "Okay, the wolf is in this thing called the tea room." It's like, and again, this is very reminiscent of the Black Ops mission when you're in Vietnam, you're going through the rat tunnels, very claustrophobic. They just jump out and shoot at you, and you're just kind of, it is kind of scary. They find the wolf. Alex and Farah work together. Price and Garrett are above ground. They're underground, trapped, as this happens. They find the wolf. He's giving a speech, his evil speech. I would like to do a video about evil speeches, because I feel like some movies are just awful and cliche, but like if you take a movie like Avengers Infinity War, the evil speech works. Like Thanos, I was hooked into every moment. When Heath Ledger's Joker did it, I was hooked into every monologue he gave. It's just something about, I think, identifying with the character. Anyway, this guy dies. Farrah shoots him, or you shoot him, depending on how you decide to do it. He's dead. Now you gotta find Hadir. We must find Hadir. ¿Dónde está Hadir? And that's where you have your second flashback. The second flashback, you're playing as Farrah 10 years ago. So if Farrah, I always kind of got a vibe she's in her late 20s. So she's probably like 19, 20 here. And it's 10 years ago. And this is where you find out about her connection to John Price. She's being tortured by the General Barklov. Her brother's across from her. He's stolen a key. He is torturing her. And they do not hold back on the torture. You look from a first-person view as you're being waterboarded. There is a very scary moment where I thought there was, and I'm going to give you a trigger warning, where I thought there was going to be a rape, or at least an implied rape, where he walks in the room. He's like, Farrah, stand in the corner. And it's up to you. You stand in the corner. You do not face me. Turn around. And I'm like, ugh. And it didn't happen. But even if it had, yeah, that's what happens in war. Unfortunately, bad people will do bad things. That didn't happen, but she faces the back and he's torturing. Oh, it's brutal. But again, my dad was a POW. They used to serve beans and they would put crushed glass in it. Crushed glass. And you'd accidentally swallow, so you had to kind of go through your food to get glass out. Yeah, this stuff happens. And again, if the critics are like, it's not nice, it happens. Unfortunately, it happens. They say you're not supposed to torture in camps. Look what happened. Look up Fort Pillow during the Civil War. What the Confederates did under Nathan Bedford Forrest to black soldiers who were prisoners. Look up what the camps that the North had. And by the way, I was rooting for the North during the Civil War, just FYI. What they did to Confederate soldiers and some of their camps. The horrible things it would do to them. This stuff happens. I know that the critics are sad and upset and mourning and crying and whimpering. I don't give a shit. This is what happens. And I can't imagine the Russian gulags and Russian prisons are, like Hogan's Heroes. Is that what you want? You want Hogan's Heroes? But anyway, Farrah leads an escape. All the women are kept separately. It's never said that they're raped, but I think the implication is that the women are kept separately and humiliated. They're leading a prison break. It's not as awesome as the prison break in Black Ops 1 with Mason and Reznov, but it's at this point the SAS Center. And here enters John Price, clean-shaven. And that's why he's a Lieutenant Price. He helps her escape, and that's where their relationship starts. Anyway, we move forward to Price's CO. I think her name is Lowell or Laszlo. She's a blonde lady, and she has that kind of like a tough guy attitude. If I can remember her name. She's only in the game a few times. She's just there to give exposition, like, this is what we're going to do. This is where we're going, and this is how we're going to do it. Laswell. I think Laszlo because of Grand Theft Auto. Laswell. He's like, look, Hadir is planning to take all this stuff to Russia and just blow it up in Russia. And this is where the line comes. Like, I'm putting together a team. Who? Some old comrades. And I was like, why is he using the word comrade? That's like a Russian thing. Is Price a socialist? Maybe. No. Turns out his comrade is none other than Nikolai. That's right, folks. Nikolai from Modern Warfare's 1, 2, and 3. But different voice actor. Same thing with Staff Sergeant Griggs. Nikolai is his contact. And Nikolai hates Barkov. He wants to stop Hadir, but he also hates Barkov. This is where the game sort of enters its final act. Garrett, again, I'm saying Garrett Cole because I'm watching the Astros game in the background. Kyle Garrett, they want to get them. They're going after the Butcher. turns out they have bombs planted in a Moscow theater, but now they have to go in undercover. They can't be carrying American weapons or Western-made weapons. It's a pretty cool sequence. St. Petersburg, straight up Call of Duty, going through streets, police shootings, chasing. This is where I felt like a real Call of Duty game. It reminded me very much of the Paris mission, where you're hunting the bomb maker in Modern Warfare 3, and you're going through these picturesque towns and everything. All right, cool. They get the butcher, and this is where a moment comes that I know a lot of people are going to get mad about. In order to get the butcher to cooperate and tell us where Hadir is. Now, Hadir is going after the general. But the problem is, because Hadir was at one point allied with Farah and the West, if Hadir releases these chemical weapons, it could cause war between Russia and the United States. All right? And again, to the IGN guy who said, so it's okay to shoot Russians, not realizing that we're kind of in a weird place with Russia right now. It's kind of spooky and it's kind of scary. They're not our enemies, but they're our friends, but it's another conversation, another time. But this is a very, very topical game. This guy, the butcher, this is the guy that's kind of wearing like a soccer jersey, or as they call it, football. By the way, we didn't come up with soccer. The word soccer, people say, Americans did it to change. No, that's what the Brits used to call it, and we just took it from them. Then everyone else changed it to football. And he was wearing the football jersey. He's always wearing that one yellow shirt. In order to get him to cooperate, Price tells Garrick, you ready to take the gloves off? They get his wife and son. You have to put the gun to their heads and pull the trigger to get them to cooperate. This reminds me of 24 Season 2. Jack Bauer does something similar. He captures a terrorist who wants to blow up a nuclear bomb, punching him, torturing him, beating the crap out of him. The guy's ready to die. So what do? They get his family, and they put a gun to his son's head. I'm not going to tell you what happens, but if you haven't seen 24, or if you haven't seen 24 Season 2, this is very reminiscent of that. I pulled the trigger. And it turns out Price didn't put bullets in it. This was a demonstration to him that, hey, this guy's ready to pull the trigger. And Cole's like, there's no, he's like, and Price is like, yeah, I didn't put a bullet in. Here are the bullets. And then the guy cooperates. He tells him where the bombs are, yada, yada, yada. Okay, Hadir is going to Barkov's estate. Let's see if we can go here. This is, that was St. Petersburg, Russia. You're in Moldova. And this mission's called Going Dark. This is kind of cool. Price and Cole. I keep saying Garrett Cole. Kyle Garrick. I'm watching the World Series and Garrett Cole's a pitcher for the Astros. Sorry. Garrett goes in by himself. You have 3 places to look for him. And all 3 buildings, like a church, a pool, and a lighthouse. Or not a lighthouse, a clock tower, whatever. And you have to find Hadir. You finally find Hadir. And that mission's kind of cool. Like, you can either go into the things with the lights on, or you have to go around, find the power turned off, go in dark, do it all stealth. I did it pure stealth. No one was alerted. You find Hadir, and you capture Hadir, and Hadir actually helps you escape. Hadir says, look, we're not enemies. My enemy is Russia. All right? Russia did this to my father and my mother, and I want revenge on them. I'm going to help Al-Qatali, but I'm going to help them do it to the Russians. And as a peace offering, they hand over Hadir to, I assume they're giving to Laswell, and Laswell's going to give him to the Russians as a peace offering, which is what happens. They're like, here you go. Here's the guy you're looking for. He's not our guy, not anymore. Nope, he's not our boy anymore. So that's what happens. All right, we're going to go into the last mission, into the final mission. I'm going to do another video. Again, this went too long, but there's so much that happens in it, and I want to get into the politics of it and everything. There's only one mission left, but we're also going to get into the Easter eggs, and we're going to talk about that ending. So, folks, if you stood by, if you enjoyed it, I want to thank you for sticking around. Let me know, comments, whatever, if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in part 3.